So I should just put B2.
Yeah, C2 here.
That's right.
Not my name.
Yeah, oh, yeah, here, well, you sign it down here.
Everything got.
Oh, yeah.
Everything that.
This is my first one.
Yeah, I need to sign my own.
All right, yeah.
That's where we ship out yeah, that should have thought that take a while to be, this way.
What do we put here?
I have a family member, business associate.
So I do put my name here.
Yeah.
Matter. Anything.
Do we have to leave the room?
Yeah. It's not.
Good, how are you?
Oh, yeah. The person.
Good trip. No, I'm all there. No, just.
We're getting close. Yeah, you'll do your preamble.
Yeah. I'll do A1.
Yeah, you'll do the minutes and then. All right, about 3 minutes and counting. So if you could take care of your devices and put them on silent and whatever we need to do. I guess as a reminder, we do go live on YouTube, so mind your P's and Q's. And we'll get prompted as to when that occurs, right? A little warmer. Mac, how are you? I'm good. Here, you. How you doing? Very cool. All right, looks like a minute and counting.
So we need Paula.
Yes,
For the first time. I guess we can go out of order as we're waiting for.
we could possibly do that if needed. You ready?
Yep.
We're live. Okay, all right, Mr. Chair, you're all set to go.
All right, thank you all for being here this evening. This is the October 1st, 2025 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design. Present currently are Jeff Webb, Galvin Yuchi, Deandra Sunner, George Niedermuller, and myself, Joel Adrian. Present from city staff is Eric Schultz. These proceedings are being recorded. We ask that those who speak identify themselves for the record. We will conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We will first receive information from the city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, the matter is uncontested. The board reserves the right to ask questions of the staff, applicant, or others in attendance prior to rendering a decision. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open discussions for Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, deny, or defer the application. Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design has the authority to do three things. One, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. Two, grant special exceptions, fact-finding function of the board. And three, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54.924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate and make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum are present and qualified to vote. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of a variance will not be a substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good. The character of the district cannot be harmed by the granting of the variance. So that's that. We have one. Oh, yes, and Paula Summers has joined the meeting. We have one deferral.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. If anybody's here for item number B1, 106 Cumming Street and 99 St. Philip Street, that item has been deferred.
And then item A1, which was review minutes from the August 6th meeting. We do not have a quorum present for that, so that one is going to get deferred as well. So we'll go to item A2, which is review of minutes from the September 3rd, 2025 meeting. Minutes have been provided. It's a motion for approval or corrections.
Motion for approval.
All in favor of the motion for approval?
Aye.
All in favor, any opposed? Motion is approved. All right, so our item B1 has been deferred, and that'll bring us to item B2. Deandra and myself will have to recuse, and Kelvin gets to be that.
Kelvin, could we ask you to step up to chair this one?
I can bring this to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kelvin Hugie. I am temporary chairman of the board tonight. For this one matter, this is BZA item number B2, 83, 85, 89, 89 and a half, 91, and 91 and a half Nassau Street, and 474 Meeting Street. This is on the east side of Charleston County. TMS numbers 459-05-03053-055 and 071, zone GB and DR-2F, Council District 4. So request for a variance from section 54.327 to allow the removal of one grand tree. Request for a variance from section 54.327 to allow the removal of 5 protected trees. And request a variance from section 54330 to allow a reduction in the impervious construction setback from the base of one grand tree. Owner Star Gospel Mission. Applicant is Seaman Westside.
Very good, thank you.
Please, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So we're headed up to the east side of the peninsula for this case. This is the application submitted by the applicant, Seaman Whiteside and Associates. This is their answers to the hardship test, and also it's all variances. I'm sorry, no special exceptions. So they're addressing the 4-point hardship test here. So 475 or 474 Meeting Street is the address of the Star Gospel. It doesn't actually touch the property. The parcel doesn't actually touch Meeting Street, but there is an access drive and what have you. And then they also own a majority or a few properties on Nassau Street. And their mission is to provide housing for the less fortunate, and they're ready to embark on an expansion plan. This is the existing condition. So you can see the Star Gospel main structure, the main operations building, if you will, is the large building behind some buildings up front on Meeting Street. And then they own a couple of Charleston single type homes, and they have a vacant lot and some open space, if you will, behind the main mission building. This is a Google Street View from Nassau Street looking into. Presently, they have an existing curb cut. They park in that open area, and they just restored the house on the right, and they're about to embark on some other restorations and then the addition of a couple additional structures. And they'll eventually tear down the one-story mission building and create a larger building to house additional individuals. So this is the existing condition survey with the trees. The big red tree is an elm tree. That was a staff level approval. That's an elm tree. Huge cracks in it. Present, it's really endangering the neighboring property. So that was a staff level approval. This is without the X's on it. This is just the existing conditions. But here's the proposed tree removals. The orange tree, grade C, is the grand pecan tree. And then the other two are just protected trees. One is a hackberry and the other is a live oak that was actually probably planted in a little garden space next to the existing mission building. And then again, they're going to utilize the existing curb cut on Nassau, but with the addition of 85 Nassau, a new structure being built, their driveway has to shift slightly north and then provide the parking field in between all the structures. So we're going to be within that protection zone of that live oak, but we'll discuss that in just a minute. So here's the arborist report on the pecan. It's a single stem. It's got some issues, some small cavities. They've been working with their neighbors. They've got support letters here. And I'll let the applicant go further into those. A couple of email exchanges. So with that said, staff is prepared to recommend approval. Again, this is a very important mission in our housing crisis that we're experiencing. The limited space, if you will, to add additional buildings in the DR zone district. And then of course, the notion of providing some staff parking, organized staff parking in the back of the new building that will be constructed. Staff feels it meets the required hardship test. So we're recommending approval with 41 calibrations of native canopy trees to be planted on the project site. If they can't fit all that with the additional structures, then we'll entertain a contribution to the city street tree program. Must use 4-foot chain link fence for the live oak to be preserved on the south side of that already restored single. The detail of that driveway encroachment is going to be critical. So it's going to be reviewed both by staff and by the project arborist to get to a comfort level where we can ensure that we won't be impacting the root plate of that tree. And then of course, provide a landscape plan for staff review and approval.
Will the applicant please come forward?
Evening, my name is Taylor Fletcher. I am here on behalf of Star Gospel Mission. I work with Seaman Whiteside, who is serving as the civil engineer and landscape architect on the project. I know Eric gave a brief introduction on Star Gospel Mission. I was going to expand on that a bit more. So since 1904, Star Gospel Mission has served the Charleston community by providing safe transitional housing for vulnerable individuals and families. In 1920, the mission relocated to 474 Meeting Street, which to this day is their home. And here they continue their longstanding tradition of offering hope and support in a Christ-centered environment. Over the years, the campus has grown to better serve men, women, and children in need, offering not just shelter, but the chance for a new beginning. Today, that mission remains as vital as ever. In an effort to continue meeting the growing need for transitional housing and to enhance the safety, dignity, and environment of the campus, we've come to the board to ask for several site design zoning variances. We believe that these requested variances are essential to allow for campus improvements, including expanding the housing capacity and increasing our impact in serving Charleston's most vulnerable neighbors. So as Eric mentioned, we are requesting the removal of one grand tree. That grand tree is rated D. That rating has been confirmed by the arborist and through a site visit with Eric. The 5 protected trees being proposed for removal. Of the 5, 4 are D or F rated. There is one B rated protected tree proposed for removal. You can see that at the bottom corner of the proposed building. In order to make the 474 building, and this would be the proposed building to replace the existing 1-story, most efficient and provide the maximum amount of beds and chapel and office space needed for the mission, we have found it necessary to remove that B-rated protected tree. But so overall, trees being proposed for removal are majority poor condition, and that condition approved or confirmed, excuse me, by both Eric and our arborist, P.O. Mead. The driveway encroachment, as Eric had brought up earlier, currently there is an encroachment into the tree protection zone of that B-rated oak up front. In coordinating with SCDOT for this site, the minimum width driveway allowed is 18 feet. And so with the proposed 85 Nassau Street building planned south of the proposed driveway, we have been kind of squeezed into encroaching onto this tree about 15% more than already existing. So existing driveway is gravel, and so the tree root system does already experience frequent traffic travel on top of it. We have a certified arborist on board, P.O. Mead, and we would be happy to coordinate with both him and city zoning staff on a preservation plan through construction and afterwards. That tree is beautiful on site. It provides a lot of shade, and we would prefer to keep it if we are able to encroach into the critical root zone just a bit.
Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify, and also for Taylor, you see 5 X's up there. That's 5 trees. Really, we're separating out the 1 grand tree and then 2 protected trees. The palm tree, that small white X above the staff level approved elm, can be relocated on site. So we don't consider that necessarily a removal. It will just, so really it's the, if you view both grand and protected trees as protected, there's 5 shown. 1 is the grand, and then 2 are the live oak and the hackberry. So you basically, in your mind, exclude the red tree because that's staff level approval. The palm will be relocated. So we're dealing with 2 protected trees and 1 grand, if you will. Just want to clarify that.
Thank you for that, Eric. Yes, the palm tree located next to the proposed dumpster, that is proposed to be replanted on site. And then referring back to the email provided by neighbors, we have reached out to property owners for 2 of the trees. Now to move over.
Yes.
Okay. This tree down here is located on the property line. It's a D-rated 20-inch hackberry. We have support from the property owner for this property right here in support of that removal. And then this F-rated 47-inch elm. As Eric mentioned, this is staff level approval for this removal. We do also have support from this neighbor. This tree is in really poor condition, and on our site visit and confirmed by the arborist, we agree that there's a little bit of concern about danger to the existing structure over here. But so we do have neighbor support for these 2 tree removals.
Is there anyone else to speak in favor of this application? Well, I'm sorry. Members of the board, questions? Yeah. Anyone else to speak in favor of the application?
So let me just double check. Sorry about that. One comment was submitted, written comment, you have that in front of you. It speaks to, open data from GIS ARC provides information about tree canopy cover and the east side. Neighborhood and surrounding areas are already in dire need of additional shade. Please encourage the developer to commit to planting at a minimum 6 additional trees throughout the city. So again, my conditions are based on the category of the pecan tree, which is a category 2 tree, so 75% of DVH inches removed, and then 5 inches per protected tree. So we have that total. Be reminded what that is, 41. And again, they'll do their best to plant trees on site. And if they can't fit them all, then we'll do a contribution to the city street tree program.
Thank you. Is there anyone to speak in opposition? Close the public discussion, board members. Motion, discussion, motion or discussion.
Not for me.
Pretty straightforward.
I'll make a motion for approval with staff comments.
I'll second.
We have a motion for approval with staff comments. All vote.
I favor.
Any opposed? Approved.
Thank you very much.
See, maybe this fitting is you. All right, so we will get to the next item now. Next item is item B3. It is William E. Murray Boulevard, West Ashley. TMS number is 306-00-00974. Is Zone GB. Request a variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 2 grand trees. Request a special exception from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 2 grand trees. And request a variance from section 54-330 to allow a reduction in the impervious construction setback from the bases of 4 grand trees. Excuse me, Eric.
Okay, making a trip out to West Ashley. This is the application submitted by the applicant Kimberly Horn, the engineer of record for the project. This is their addressing the hardship test. With some graphics included. So this doesn't show William E. Murray as a public right of way, but I believe at this point in time, it has been dedicated to the city. There was some hiccups involving that, so it doesn't show the white line, if you will. But we're in that curve adjacent to the DR6 property, and it is zone DB, general business, which allows multifamily development. So here you see the street and the wooded area. This particular parcel does include a drainage easement on it. It has a linear pond. That's that like strip that looks a little different from the canopy cover plan left, if you will. And then it abuts the school, the West Ashley High School property. The proposal is to build based on the densities allowed under GB multifamily, an apartment complex, including 3 principal multifamily buildings with the leasing center in the Y-shaped one or the V-shaped one. And then in the center, they would have some amenity buildings, and then of course being surface park. And then again, you can see the existing pond plan left. So You can see the grand trees that are scattered about on the site. I've been told and reassured that they'll meet the 15 trees per acre requirement with the trees around the pond and other trees to be preserved. But we're dealing with a handful of grand trees. Very unique site in the sense that there's a little grove of chestnut oak, swamp chestnut oak, and a couple of very distinctive cherry bark oak, which in my mind, when I'm in the woods, it's, to identify trees properly, you don't always have the acorn, you don't always have the leaf, but the cherry bark oak is kind of in the red oak family. But these trunks clearly cry out cherry bark, cherry. If you know a black cherry, wild black cherry, very distinctive bark pattern. But anyway, so we visited the site, and after reading the landscape and getting close and understanding these trees, we sent some information back to the applicant, and the city was not going to be supportive of request number 3, the impacts to the trees. So this is what they provided. This was the original layout. This is the arborist comments about those specific trees. So we're dealing with 2 water oaks, single stem, actually a double stem and a single stem water oak. Both grade Ds. The swamp chestnut oak, grade C, and the cherry bark oak. And then the others are to be preserved but being shown as slight impacts. This is a removal. This is the 24-inch chestnut oak, tree number 4. These trees are competing. They got very, very high crowns, very, very stout boles, and then they open up into the existing available sunlight. So they're very tall, and some show some epicormic growth on the stem, but crowns are very high. This is the other cherry bark oak, be removed, grade C. It's got some not great crown formation or branch attachments in the upper crown. The water oak, again, you can see probably some storm damage in the very top where the trunk has a pretty uniform diameter, and then all of a sudden it dog legs off to the right there. And then you can see probably that even broke further, and you see some water sprouts on the end of that break. And then the double leader. What we found the other day was that this site apparently holds some water. There was no water. We've had a pretty good dry spell the last couple of weeks, but you can tell just by the massive buttress roots that these trees have developed. And that's a sure sign of trying to stabilize themselves with a crown so high. We had some discussion in the field and concern about the root flares, and then the roots really expand out from the base of the trunk. You can see some of that in these photos. This actually looks like this photo was taken with some water, maybe standing. It looks like a little reflection there. Again. So this is an exhibit that I'll want you to come back to. For the tree that's up on William E. Mary, we're asking that the building slide just a little bit. They can steal a couple feet out of the drive aisle to that parking field to the right, and then eliminate the sidewalk that wraps around that parking, and just bring the sidewalk in and cross where maybe I have the red line shown. So staff recommends approval with the condition, and I apologize. Hold on a minute here. I forgot to upload the revised image. Hopefully the applicant has it, but back to this image. Yeah, so basically what they've done is they've increased the available space around this by reducing the drive aisle here eliminated these parking spaces. So very good. Got to upload that. My bad. So perfect. The city was not going to support those impacts, so this is the revised layout, providing a much greater space around the B grade tree, and then eliminating those parking spaces off the two C grade. And actually, we downgraded the one chestnut oak to a D. It has a little bit of a dead crown in it, but we think maybe could be pruned out. So with that said, staff will support the special exception to remove 2 water oaks and then the chestnut oak and the 1 cherry bark oak. And the conditions are as such. Must plant 62.75 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the project site, must use 4-foot chain link fence as tree protection barricades, and to be placed at the edge of any proposed improvements. So not just at the TPZ, the tree protection zone, but now with this layout at the back of what will become curb and the building. Have a certified arborist provide a TPP, that's a tree preservation plan for the trees to be preserved. Must shift the rectangular building adjacent to William E. Murray to the east, provide greater distance between the grand cherry bark oak, and shift the sidewalk as well. And then provide a tree mitigation tree plan for both DRB and TRC review and approval.
All right, Eric, thank you. Is there anybody present that is opposed to this application? All right, is the applicant present? Would you like to be heard?
And just for the record, we did not receive any written comments on this item.
Good evening. Suppose I'm the applicant. My name is Andy Weatherford. I'm one of the owners of Millstone. We've got our Kinley Horn team here, which if there's any detailed questions or additional information, they'd be happy to present. But I just wanted to start by introducing myself, my company, and talk a little bit about the project, just at a high level. So as I mentioned, I'm one of the owners of Millstone, for the applicant and developer for this project. My business partner and I, we started Millstone about 8 years ago. We bootstrapped the company, working every position in our company as we grew. And over the years, we've grown from a third-party general contracting company for commercial construction into a vertically integrated real estate development shop. And the reason we did that is because we understand as we grew that it's important to become a part of the communities that we're building in. And by vertically integrating, for the life of a project, from design development and entitlements through construction, through operations and management and ownership of the project, there's one point of contact for this project, for the community, for future residents and neighbors. That's me and my team. And the advantage we find in that is our ability to be collaborative with the communities that we build in, and to be flexible with our design, as we worked very hard to do on this project. As Eric mentioned, we've tried to accommodate as best we could the feedback that we got from staff on this final site design. And of course, we've been working very close with Mr. David Meeks and his team at DRB through several iterations of the site plan. As we understood, there were 2 main goals for this project, right? To really capture the vision and the intent that DRB has for the development of this property. And of course, doing so while generating as much tree save as we could. So through several sketch plans, a whole lot of meetings, I think we're on like the 6th or 7th design iteration at this point. A few of them made the presentation packet tonight. We've tried to meet all of those things, and hopefully that's what we've delivered here. But of course, our goal as a multifamily developer is to provide projects that represent meaningful housing stock for communities that are in dire need of housing, right? West Ashley is experiencing that, like a lot of communities across the country. And our goal is to deliver some meaning housing supply at a top of market, great delivery quality project for our future residents to call home. So just high level, that's a little bit about me, my company, and this project. Happy to have Andrew or Kimley Horn talk if there's any other questions or concerns that we can address.
All right, thank you. If anybody else that wants to speak, we'll close this application to the public. It'll be open to the board for discussion or questions.
I think I'd like to just make it clear that the conditions, maybe you attach this exhibit. There was also an exhibit showing a cross section through this. If you note, there's a small note there, the retaining wall for tree preservation. They did some preliminary takeoffs on, so that drive aisle in that loop would be raised a little bit and held by a retaining wall to help save that or preserve that tree save area. And then the cherry bark oak, obviously they gave it more generous space, but we have to be real careful on how to maintain positive drainage around that. We don't, it's apparently used to having some wet feet, but we don't want to drown it by putting it in a hole now. So anyway.
All right.
Eric, at the top left, does that reflect your adjustment?
That does not.
Okay.
So that goes back to my additional sketch that then is referenced in the condition. Just to eliminate that sidewalk wrapping around that dead end parking and shift the building as many feet as we can, but we can, steal a couple feet out of the drive aisle on that small little parking pod and shift.
It looks like looks like a lot of room in 2D, but I guess there's 2 or 3 feet of fill. Is that why you're trying to get more room over there?
Yes.
Sense. And so we're only looking at the pre-removal variance, pre-removal special exception.
Yeah, so number 3 can be,
resolved by the
Yep.
plan changes.
Yes. You can withdraw number 3.
Are there any questions of the applicant? Questions to staff? Or is there a motion?
I think the special exceptions are pretty different test, obviously, with what I'd say on the variance trees. The positive, I think, is the saving some grands of the same species and the higher quality in that zone. And I assume are the edges naturally higher or existing grades higher with the bowl in the middle?
Well, it's interesting. We didn't really, I think on the William E. Murray side, it's a more level with the sidewalk on that side, but West Wildcat is a bit higher and you drop into the site, and it was very obvious when we looked at that grouping that just the leaves, you could tell have been underwater and the buttress roots on the trees. The water oak that we went out to more in the center of the lot, I think the grade kind of falls toward West Wildcat, and it's a little bit higher so I suspect we won't have a dish around the cherry bark oak to be saved along that right away.
No questions or some have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the staff recommendations and conditions and entering in this exhibit as part of the approval, as well as Eric's sketch that was presented.
Excellent. Is there a second to the motion for Paula?
Second.
Right, Cal. We'll go to vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye in favor.
Aye
in favor.
Aye in favor. Any opposed? Motion's approved. Thank you for your time. All right, our next item is going to be item P4, excuse me, which is Southwick Drive on Johnson Island. TMS number is 27900 00018 is zoned DR6 and C. Request a variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 18 grand trees. And request a special exception in section 54-327 to allow the removal of 12 grand trees. Eric?
So to start off, the first request is modified to 16 trees. As we learned that one was a sweet gum and one the city was not going to support, so they ended up modifying their plan to preserve it. Then second special exception remains at 12. This is the application submitted by HCAP Johns Island 2024 LLC. This is their letter addressing the 4-point hardship test. So this group kind of is following a group that went through an effort with the city months ago. They developed a parcel or parcels adjacent to this particular piece of property and went through an exercise to work with the city to go through a rezoning effort. So the parcel that we're dealing with is DR6, and then you can see that through that effort and the support, or to have the city support that rezoning, they incorporated conservation zoning into it as well with wetland data that was presented. And then there was some exercises about the vision for some additional multifamily type housing against conservation. So they did some things to provide a buffer around the C zoning to address the incompatible zoning issue with multifamily against conservation. Anyway, heavily wooded site. You can see on the south side, just by the color of the canopy, you got wetland systems running parallel to Southwick and parallel to Maybank further back. Site here, you can see the wetland system in gray. They are seeking, I think, a couple small impacts to those wetlands. And then every green tree is a grand tree, and then every colored tree with the development overlay is a tree slated for removal to build the project. So it's not a fee simple. It kind of reads as a fee simple project here, but it's actually a multifamily. They just use the lot lines to kind of figure out their spacing of single family attached units, providing that. And then there is a small little pod of sort of quads or like a multifamily building closer to the southern entrance on Southwick, if you will. And then they'll have their amenity center in a little residual high ground area kind of in the center. What's important here is when the city was dealing with the rezoning, the city also made it very clear that we need connectivity on Johns Island. The neighboring property, as like this developer wasn't really wanting to entertain a major subdivision and dedicate roads to the public, but they are willing to place public access easements over the trunk roads or driveways, if you will, to allow the general public to traverse through their projects. And this is very important because far west, the city is going to be building a new recreation center, and the whole network nobody would have to get out on the Maybank Highway, essentially from Marywood through the Southwicks areas to get to the future city enlarged park. So it's very critical as part of the Johns Island community plan to create that network. So this is a zoom in of the west side of the project. You can see the variance trees are those circled in red, and then their grades are the colors. The yellow tree down by the very bottom pond was found to be a sweet gum, so that's one that came off. And then this eastern side is again where you have the housing pod paralleling Southwick on the north side, and then a road, a drive and single loaded units through the wetlands. And then the two trees on the south side of that lower pond, staff just didn't see a hardship or a special exception being met there, so they removed those from being removed. They'll modify the pond. The red tree, again, I just wanted to point out, and we did discover one additional water oak, two water oaks, and they were confirmed by the consulting arborist. I have a picture of the yellow one that's again lining up with that stub out from the neighboring project, and it would be in the center line of that drive. That's that water oak tree number 42,330 or 534, just to give you an idea of that particular tree. It's got some breakage in the crown and a double leader. The consulting arborist, Mac with Newkirk Forestry Land Management, conducted the survey, and this is all his notes. There's no A or B grade tree on this side. They're all multi-stem, majority. There's a single stem here and there. Loblolly Bay is very prominent in this section of Johns Island. I recall it being prominent in the subdivision across Southwick many years ago when that one was cut in there. But so I'll let Max speak to that specific species, but in my opinion, it likes sandy soils. There's a mat of almost like blueberry, high bush blueberry, or some kind of ground cover. And then these trees, some being singular stem, many being multi-stem. So staff again was out on Friday of last week to post the site, and we wanted to look at the Sol black gum. And the Sol black gum ended up being a triple stem, not very high quality at all. We wanted to seek out the Sol southern magnolia. We found it, and it was again a very small diameter, multi-stem, but meeting the cut for 6 inches and above, and then equaling 24 and above. That's the 11-10-8. So, and then the water oaks, the majority of them are all multi-stem. So I'm not quite sure of the history of this land, but not very high quality trees. Although, as you know, all trees have value. And this is the list here. So this was just my sketch when I sent it back to the applicant that, you could easily modify the pond. The trees are one's in the wetland buffer and the other one's close enough to the edge that it could be easily modified. So they pulled those out of their request. Staff recommends approval to preserve tree number 3406 and 32-452 at the pond perimeter. And you'll see that must plant 599.5 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the project site. We like to see this in the form of 240 2.5-inch trees. We can replant the forest, and these trees may be used in a comment to come here. Must use 4-foot chain link fences, tree protection barricade details. For non-grant trees, obviously this is a multi-family site, so they have to meet the 15 trees per acre requirement. All those wetlands, all those trees in the wetlands can easily meet that. However, there are protected trees at the perimeter of the site adjacent to Southwick Drive, and due to maybe some grading issues, if they can't preserve a strip of trees, as shown a little bit, you see like a little row of trees just behind the property line. If those can't be, because the city's going to be asking for a sidewalk to be built along the frontage, and if those trees can't be preserved, then the 240 mitigation trees should be used to provide a very robust reforestation plan utilizing the mitigation trees to be placed along the edge there. The tree mitigation plan must be submitted and reviewed and approved by TRC. And then we must place the condition that isn't really tree related, but we want to make sure that a public access easement on the private drive is shown as per the applicant's exhibit, which you'll see in just a minute, prior to recording the final certificate of construction completeness for the last pod of units. So with that said, the applicant forwarded this PDF PowerPoint that we'll speak to.
All right, thank you, Eric. First, I'll ask if there's anybody present
Oh,
that.
I'm sorry. Can I interrupt?
Yes.
Sorry. We did receive 10 comments, 9 comments in opposition. And, you can look at their addresses, and some of them don't provide necessarily the entire address. But the majority are from, I would say, Johns Island. And they speak to the preservation of trees needed on Johns Island. And so you were forwarded those, and then one was in support. Just simply saying, please approve the application. So with that said, yes.
Very good. Is there anybody present that is opposed to this application? Okay, the application is contested, so
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we didn't say them.
first we will hear from the applicant, anybody that's in favor, and then we'll hear from those that are opposed.
Good evening, Ryan Blair with Heritage, for the owner of the property. I'm joined by Will Harrington of Heritage, as well as Matt Kaufman from Newkirk, and our counsel with John Maslon. Thank you for your time tonight and consideration. We've put a lot of thought into this plan. We've owned the property for about 2 years, and we've been going through the TRP process to try to create a robust neighborhood plan that protects as much of the natural resources as we can. And so, Eric, do you mind?
Yeah, you just tell me when the forward.
Go ahead to the next one, or then two of them. I'm not gonna repeat what you've done, so.
Okay.
So what I wanted to highlight is we are requesting the removal of 16 grand trees for variance. That may sound like a lot. This property is over 60 acres in size. There are 137 grand trees on site. So between the grand trees for variance, as well as the 16, as well as 12 for special exception, we're seeking to remove 20% of them and preserve 80% of the trees on site. All of the trees are rated D or C, confirmed by the arborist as well as Charleston City staff. And the majority of them are also multi-stem, either from damage prior or environmental issues, lack of sunlight in the forest. 0% of these trees are live oaks. That's important to us, and we understand that's important to Johns Island. And then lastly, we are required to preserve about 909 protected trees on site. We are preserving over 2,500 protected trees on the site. In the plans that we've submitted, there's actually 2,909. We kind of backed that down in our presentation because of what Eric alluded to, maybe due to some grading issues along the sidewalk and SCDOT coordination. We may need to remove some of those trees, but in any case, it would be more than 2,500. Eric, do you mind going to the 2 slides, or 3 slides from here? You can go ahead and click. I think this is, if you did my PowerPoint, oh, perfect. So first I wanted to walk through the site itself and why we arrived at where we are. So number one, we've got highly constrained wetlands. This is from a JD letter that is in place today based on the delineation. The wetlands on the far left side is non-jurisdictional. And then the wetlands in this JD letter on the right side is jurisdictional because there's a stream that is in the bottom portion of that section there. So we have 2 really big pinch points that are challenging. So the first thing that we thought of was how do we protect these wetlands and have as little disturbance as possible to them. When we first bought the site, we had a new delineation done. We had 2 different consultants do that, and those delineations actually shrunk in size. But we took a step back, and the city recently, prior to that, approved a rezoning with conservation zoning around these wetlands, and we tried to maintain the intent of what the city approved. If you mind clicking the next one. So the first constraint is the location of the cross access roads. We are hemmed in on Southwick Drive, both coming from the bottom due to the access to the wetlands constraints and traversing to the left to connect to the existing stub. and minimizing the impact to the wetlands there. Secondarily, if you come from the north side, we've lined that up with the intersection across Southwick Drive. That is further away from the corner because of the corner clearance issues and speeding around that intersection in SCDOT's commentary. And then the little stubs, the city has asked for those to be private access easements, which we willingly and gladly do. I think this is a key component of not only our development, but the area. It provides access from the neighborhood to the north, safe access via sidewalks through this development, through Hamlin and Maybank, and to Hayes Park Retail, as well as the extension to the new rec center that is being developed and the extension to the rec center to Hayes Park Retail. So it creates a family-friendly, walkable place and vehicular travel that is off of the main drags of Johns Island. You don't mind clicking again. Next, we have the extension of this road network to try to also minimize the impacts to wetlands, and then just to tie into where these are. Click one more time, please. This is the sidewalk that is required for the zoning ordinance that we are willing to install. Please click again. And then this gray area is the area that's left for development once all of these constraints are in place. So it really leaves us limited locations for the residential units. You'll see that the majority of these streets are actually single loaded. It's not a cost-effective design, but it's very limited because of the site constraints. And then the last click, please, for this one. The last thing I would mention is that this is a special stormwater district. There were some commentary from, we reviewed the comments from some of the citizens concerned about stormwater and flooding issues. The special stormwater district or special protection areas, it's defined in the ordinance, requires us to take the pre-existing conditions and reduce stormwater runoff volumes by 50%. The neighborhood to the north was built in the 1970s. That has zero stormwater design in place. That water is running, traversing Plant South to us. We are going to capture that and actually help the stormwater situation while also maintaining all of the wetlands. We have about 0.39 acres of wetlands impacts to the jurisdictional. And then we have less than an acre to the non-jurisdictional. And then lastly, yes, perfect. So once we looked at those constraints, we also wanted to try to preserve as much land as possible. So we looked at the neighboring properties. You've got two different neighbors. One is the new Hamlin and Maybank development, as well as some single family residential units or houses that are on the plain left side here. What we did was we said, okay, let's limit the impacts to these areas as much as possible, consolidate the development area so we have limited impervious area, and we can protect the backyards of these neighbors. So we've taken the wetlands area, or the uplands area that we could develop on the left side, which is large in scale, and we've protected that and shifted everything to consolidate it to a development plan that is on 20 acres. 62% of the site area remains undisturbed. It's a large portion of the site. And overall, I know this is not a zoning code requirement, but the tree canopy itself, there's a higher percentage of tree canopy that is maintained in this design versus if we were to protect individual grant trees. And then I'm going to try to go through this quickly because this is a lot of text here. These are answers to the variance tests themselves, and it's kind of a rehashing of what we just discussed. Number one, the site geometry is extremely limited due to the wetlands, the adjacent road network tie-ins, as well as the cross access and sidewalks that are required. And once these improvements are in place, there's limited areas for actual residential houses to go. That is particularly true if we're trying to preserve and maintain uplands in an area of the site and consolidate most of this development to one section. And these conditions do not generally apply to the nearby vicinity. I think these conditions are unique to the site because of the limited location for the street network, as well as the required cross-access connections, as well as the wetlands constraints and the geometry of the site. This is also in a special stormwater district, and this site actually gives us, because of its large size, a unique opportunity to preserve larger area than clear cutting the entire site on a other site. Next one, thank you. And then these conditions unreasonably prohibit the utilization of the property. If the variance and or special exceptions were not granted, we would be unable to install the street network that is required. We would be unable to install the sidewalk that is required by the zoning ordinance. And we would be unable to then place the buildings within those street networks with access with driveways to those infrastructure requirements. And then lastly, we have some major grading challenges with this site. It's a very flat site as all of Charleston. So we have roughly 2 to 3 feet of fill across the site with this consolidated area, trying to get stormwater routed to the proper stormwater control devices, and then ultimately to the stream that is planned south to us. And then lastly, this does not detriment the character of the area. All of the trees that are being requested for removal are of poor quality. They're rated D predominantly as well as C. There are 0 live oaks. 62% of the site will remain undisturbed. There's a large swath of land along Southwick Drive that remains the existing forest area, as well as the neighboring properties to the left of us. We preserve that area as well. New pedestrian will actually enhance the character and access from a traffic standpoint. We are both, number one, installing a much needed traffic light at the intersection of Southwick Drive and Maybank Highway. We contribute 3% of the traffic to that. That's a failing stoplight. The city asked us if we would install it. We said, absolutely, at our sole cost, we'll take care of it. And then lastly, the character of this development is very similar to Hamlet and Maybank and the adjacent newer development and residential houses across the city as well. So that's going to wrap up my presentation. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer any, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for?
I have a question.
If you can step back up there real quick. Paul's got a question.
I have 2 questions. Of the 62% that's being preserved, what percentage of that is wetlands and what percentage is the high ground in the back?
There's roughly 3.5 acres of high ground at the back that's not being touched out of the 60. So it's at 5% of the total site. There's a little over 20 acres of uplands that we're disturbing.
Okay. And then if you did decide to develop that backside, would you be able to get a wetland permit for the road crossing?
The density of this site is 164 units is the DR6 max density. We have proposed 158. The reason for that is going back to the Middleburg rezoning, they were in discussions with Habitat for Humanity about donating an acre on that top portion of the site. So while we've been in discussions with Habitat, they've not asked to do that. We have preserved 6 units just in case the city and everybody would want that. So the only development that would happen in that section would be in a very top corner, 1 acre of the 4. The others would require a wetlands impact permit, as well as additional rezoning because we'd be capped on the density.
Thank you. Is there anybody else present that wants to speak in favor of the application? All right, then we will go to those that are opposed. I know that you were opposed in the back. You can start it off.
Hi, my name's Erin. I'm a resident of that area on Stanwick Drive. And if I had it in my power, I would immediately stop this project. I know for a fact that there are Mississippi vipers, hawks, herd of deer that live there, owls. And it's sad for me to see that this is happening, especially in a wetland area particularly. But I'm happy to hear that you're not just going to clear cut everything. It's true, there are some flooding issues in that area. However, I know that trees obviously absorb the water. So I would like to see us preserve as many trees in that area and keep some sort of wildlife there and have them have a habitat to be in and live in rather than, I don't honestly know where they're all going to go. So that's my major concern of mine. It's going to cause traffic hazards if the deer have nowhere to go. So I would love to see us put a stop to this, at least keep as many trees there as we can. I've noticed from other neighborhoods that the trees that they plant, if you drive through these neighborhoods, they never look good, they never flourish, and half of them end up dying anyway. So you can go ahead and cut and then replant, but they never are as healthy as the ones that are in place at this time. So speaking from someone who has a small child, I'm trying to do something about the clear cutting that's happening on Johns Island. I'd love to see Johns Island continue to be rural Johns Island instead of it becoming similar to, no offense, but the Mount Pleasant area where it's strip mall after strip mall, and that's what's starting to happen on Johns Island. So I would love to see us put our foot down at some point. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else present that's opposed or like to be heard?
Hello, my name is Camille Duquette and I live on Southwick Drive. I'm a wildlife biologist and walk past that area every day. And similar to what Aaron said, I see all kinds of wildlife come from this plot of land. And while I understand that development here has already been approved, and I appreciate that there's been as much protection of it that's been taken into account already. I think there are alternatives for this site that still need to be considered. 30 grand trees is an enormous amount. I know that most of them are graded D or C. From a wildlife point of view, they still provide food, they still provide shelter, they still provide nesting habitat for endangered animals, imperiled animals. And so I heard that there is 158 units to be put in. That's very close to the density, the high density that this lot is set at. I see a couple of areas where maybe the units can be a little bit more spaced apart. Maybe there is a space in between said units so that some of these trees can be saved. I understand that not all 30 will be able to be saved, but I don't believe that there is, I believe that there is a better alternative. Again, I see so much wildlife that's going to be disturbed. 38% of disturbance on the site is still an extremely high amount. And so I just urge the council to maybe ask for other alternatives where the amount of units could be lessened and the number of trees could be saved, could be increased. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else present that's opposed or like to be heard? All right, then it'll go back to the applicant for rebuttal.
Hi, I'm Matt Hoffman with Newkirk Forestry and Land Management, certified arborist, tree risk assessor, master's and PhD in forestry, undergraduate wildlife, 35 years of experience. Did the tree survey on the site, as Eric said. Tree quality on this site is poor at best. I'm not sure of the past land management, but I've not run into many sites that have as many C and D trees uniformly across the site. There are a lot of split stem trees, a lot of stem rot in a lot of the trees on the site. I don't know what caused that. Eric and I were looking at it when we walked the site earlier in August, and it is fairly poor quality. We've also done the threatened and endangered species survey, including the acoustic surveying out here for the northern long-eared bat, and not present on site. Given the site constraints, I think they're doing from an environmental standpoint the best you can do with the site to accommodate their desire as a landowner, but also looking at it from an environmental standpoint, how do you fit it in with having minimal impacts on site?
Eric had mentioned the loblolly. You want to speak to that?
Loblolly Bay is a native tree that you find in coastal South Carolina. Typically, you find it south of 17, and you'll find it in these coastal areas. You especially see it in these old dune swale type communities. It's a very common tree species that you'll see. Unfortunately, most of the loblolly bays on this site are of poor quality, have stem rot or multiple stems. Fairly soft wood and very susceptible. We're also starting to see the ambrosia beetle. We've already seen it in the red bays and what it's doing. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Is it anybody else that needs to speak in the rebuttal?
Good afternoon, I'm John Mastellon. I'm a lawyer, and so whenever anybody gives me a chance to say something personally, hard not to, but I'll keep it brief. We appreciate the comments of those that have concerns about this site and actually took the time and effort to come out here and speak their mind. And as you've heard from my client, they made a real effort here to bring this development forward in a sympathetic way that recognizes what can be developed here, but also recognizes a lot of the concerns that you've seen in the comments and you've heard from these folks tonight. And again, is it perfect? Probably we never get to that level of perfection where everybody agrees it's just right, but it's a very sympathetic, very community oriented, very environmentally sensitive project. And when you look at the variance test and the special exception test, I believe they check all the boxes. So we thank you for your time. We would ask for your approval. Thank you.
Thank you. We will close the public portion of the meeting for this application. It will be open to the board for discussion. And I'm gonna start. So my questions would be those trees that are located plan board where the sidewalk is going. Can the sidewalk be located or bent, go around those trees? Is there a grading issue? I don't know, if we've got grading issues for any of these trees. I will say that I do agree with some of the comments about, and not knowing specifically which trees were C grade versus D grade. When I look at this tree, I think, well, if we just don't do those two lots right there, that one's saved. This one, but I'm not seeing the color chart to know that's a C tree. I'm guessing that one's D, I think. And what those look like, and if there is an opportunity to maybe save one or two additional trees. Thankful that you've already reworked and gone from 30 to 28, but maybe there is the potential in looking at some of these small little pockets that something additional could be done. So I'd like for y'all to just let me know what we're looking at, and I'm going to use that one as the single.
Well, and Joel, maybe we can go by maybe one by one or something.
Right, we could look at numbers, but I don't know the grading, so if this has to come up 2 feet from that tree's not gonna make it.
So I'll speak to the sidewalk. We're going to have an on-site meeting with staff. Obviously, the city prefers the sidewalk to be in the right of way. Presently, Southwick is I want to guess maybe 24 foot of pavement, and then it's just roadside swale. There's actually a pretty decent ditch that not so much on the piece that's perpendicular to Maybank. There is a ditch, but it kind of flattens out in some areas, but along Southwick it is, because right where we don't have the grading contour lines, but where the road opposes the existing road in the earlier subdivision, there is a canal that drains Southwick, and it's perpendicular to that portion and drains to the bottom wetland. It's pretty significant. It's about 3 feet wide, and I don't know when it was dug, how many years ago, but that's carrying public water. So in their design, they're going to have to account for a drainage easement, if there's not already one in place, to carry that public water off of Southwick to its outfall they speak of a stream which kind of parallels that bottom property line a little bit through that wetland. So we aren't sure as to the placement of the sidewalk. The city is very much getting sidewalks for all means of mobility throughout all regions of the city, whether it be Johns Island, Cainhoy, wherever. And it's a requirement of the TRC. So whether they pipe that ditch and put a sidewalk in the right of way, whether the sidewalk, we do allow and will entertain a sidewalk just inside the property line. Again, it's to be determined, but that's that.
And from our perspective, we agree with the city. We prefer it in the right of way. Right now, there's no curb. We've had challenges with SCDOT getting a sidewalk adjacent to a road without a curb, as well as the ditch and the geometry is limited. So as you can see in our plan, the dark gray trees are actually protected trees. That's why we had referenced 2,500 being saved, even though 2,900 are shown. The exception would be there if our permitting, which is in process with SCDOT, forces that sidewalk onto the property. So that's the challenge. We would prefer it in the right of way. We'll do everything in our power, but we do not control SCDOT.
I want to go back to just out of their presentation back to the. So as you recall, the lower right or left pond, that tree with the sweet gums to that, and then the two yellow trees on the right pond are being preserved. So if you want to go tree by tree, we can kind of zero in on a number if you like. But
do you mind if I make two clarifying comments? You had a question about, sorry, the color codes. This is a big site. So anything that's orange is a D-rated tree. Anything yellow is a C-rated tree. And if either of those have a red circle, that's a variance.
Perfect. So
Um,
that loaner out there is a C grade variance.
which one was sorry?
The one that keep point to here. One is a C grade variance.
That is correct. And we do have 2 to 3 feet of fill across that site. I mean, we are so constrained with the outlet for our stormwater to get water. We can't take it into the wetlands. We've got to take it all the way to that ditch. And just with minimum slope sizes and pipe sizes, it's impossible without raising that site 2 to 3 feet. And we did look at trying to preserve some of these trees, which would then force us to impact more area that we're trying to preserve on the left. So while there would be some specific C or D rated trees that could possibly have retaining walls around them, the site would actually have more impact than what we're showing, because we're going to have to build more roadway, more impervious, and more lots, and we often, yeah.
Have you had a meeting with the adjacent neighborhood associations on this project?
We met with John's Logar and the John's Island Advocacy. Probably yes. We also met with Habitat for Humanity as well.
This isn't necessarily about, I guess, preserving the trees, but more about the comment about, wildlife connections, removing a couple of lots or expanding them and allowing these wetlands to stay connected. Have you guys explored that at all? And maybe the road goes over so animals can safely, cross underneath, or, that's happening all around. And that would also be in tune with the Johns Island.
So this may be a little deceiving because this is shown as a site plan. The lot lines are shown, but they're actually 4-unit or 5-unit townhouses. And typically the city of Charleston or any jurisdiction has a minimum spacing between buildings. So even though the lot lines show they're touching, there's 20 feet between buildings. So there are pathways. It's not like a clear wall all the way around along the street. So there are pathways in and to the wetland areas. I'm sorry, I wasn't following the street.
I'm just saying it with the grading issue, just trying to keep the wetlands, connected so that, the animals can, you say something like California, which I know is a lot different of an elevation, but
just a thought. I mean, often those areas between townhomes get filled with utilities and, you know, it doesn't end up being a nice place to pass through.
Yeah, so all of our utilities underground are in the street network, and then they'll stub out from the street to the front of each house. On the houses themselves, they generally have a trash room or a utility meter is within the garage or within a kind of enclosed section of that house. So there are 15, at least 15, sometimes 25. So that's generally the range between those individual houses or the packs of houses. The apartment unit, which are really 12-unit apartments, 3-story, it's gonna feel like a large house, all 1 bedroom. Those have more space in between them.
There's no single family. It's all multifamily or connected townhouses.
They're all connected townhouses. However, I think that's, Eric may be able to attest to this better. I think multifamily by definition is more than one house on a lot.
Yeah.
And we're not doing a subdivision plan, so that's what's triggering the multifamily.
Those 3 units on this bottom right, those apartments or?
Correct.
The loner tree is tree 32752, a 922 water oak, grade C.
What about this tree here? Is that a pond area or something? I know it's a D, but why, it seems like it's far enough to the edge that it could be saved.
Yes, it's for grading tie-ins, and Middleburg has a pipe that is running stormwater. It gets caught in that section through Middleburg's property. It's actually started to back up a little bit. So we've got some flooding issues we need to address with grading. And then the second reason we requested that to be removed is if we ever needed to access a vehicle into or a gator or maintenance vehicle into that left section, that's the only way to get there.
Let me say that I love the presentations been very good. And when I look at that plan, I appreciate the fact that you've highlighted in the green, the grand trees, and then you've got those gray trees that are in those wetland areas are going to remain. And I think that the site should not appear to be clear cut because there's so many large pockets of area where the mature trees are going to remain. I do believe it's a very difficult site to navigate. When you look at those 3 major pockets, you look at the way that property line comes in, and it's like a pizza slice over there on the left-hand side. And then the tie-ins for roads and the drainage and all. I think very well done, seems to be very well thought out. And I was curious if some of those others could be saved. Obviously, we could grant an approval and say keep, but I think that overall, when they are keeping 2,500 protected trees and 80% of the grands are going to remain on the property, and you have a site that 62% is for the most part unusable, or being offered to not be used. I think that's being very conservative and neighborhood friendly. Say it that way.
Of the trees being removed, the canopy is relatively high. But, you know, now this tree's by itself and with the support of its friends are gone.
Correct. Yeah, typically have, most of those have very low live crown ratios.
Maybe just humor me on Jeff's train of thought. I wanted to look at a couple more. Eric, was that the one that you were saying that stormwater pond could be?
Yeah, those two have come off,
right?
right?
So
Yeah.
those, okay, so I was gonna ask about that one
That
too, because that looks like it's in the wetland, right?
They're-
Even if it's a C or a D, it's still, wildlife habitat.
Preserved.
Um,
That one's
Talk
a
about
sweet
that
gum.
one.
That was determined to be sweet gum, so that's not grand.
okay. And then like even some of these that are just look like they're in open areas, like I know that's a D, but looks pretty close to that kind of wetland forested area. Are there some, maybe that one is, I don't know if there's a house there, but it looks pretty close to the property line. Are there others that could be considered, just even if it's a D, just leave it for wildlife habitat or food and cover?
Yeah, so those two in particular you mentioned, they're on the fringe. We'd love to keep them for the residents of this development, not in the neighborhood. The challenge is the grading to get stormwater flowing into that pond. While we're raising the site 2 to 3 feet across, it just becomes really challenging to tie in and to get all the stormwater to flow appropriately. We're not allowed to just outlet into the wetlands. So if we had to tie grades into that tree, we're gonna have water flow into that wetlands, which is, it's not allowed. In some of these in the field, we would try to keep. I mean, if the sidewalk along Southwick Drive is allowed to be installed in the right of way, that would allow us to consider keeping the 3 trees at the perimeter of Southwick, even though I've done this for 15 years and I've done multiple rezoning cases, and I've had one where I did a rezoning, it was approved, and then a year later we came back and I was accused of baiting and switching. And I wanted to present the whole picture, worst case, and so that's what we presented today.
I believe Eric's conditions spoke to that. That even if there were additional, if you put your conditions up, I think there was like a sidewalk was installed, reforestation in that area.
One more thing on Eric, can you go back to the overall one real quick? The blank spaces, what's the, I know we got a lot of trees to plant back to mitigate, but I'm looking at like that zone, it's out of the wetland buffer, but out of, not in a pond area. What's the idea on those spaces? Is there a plan for them, or can it be reforested?
Our landscape architects here, before she speaks, I said generally all of these units will have backyards. It's really big for us.
Within the dashed lot area or?
Correct.
Okay.
Generally, we try to accommodate a 20-foot backyard with a porch or something along that nature. And we've allocated and kind of laid out the houses so they all back up to these preserved areas because it's important for those units to have that. And Austin can speak to the white areas.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Hassi Akam, landscape architect, urban planner for Bowman. I'm not going to speak exactly to that location, but the idea here was while mitigating, but also taking advantage of the views and where the density is, and as well as balancing off the podium planting to kind of give the best of the two worlds of kind of this passive and active program area, especially around like the apartments, but also preserving some of the views to the wetland rather than kind of dense planting there to and create a more of a cohesive approach to planting across the master plan, and where the most of the pedestrian activity and whatnot would be from each of the units as well as the apartments to the amenity center, meaning these are private streets, but they would be planted. The podiums, the multifamily would be nicely planted around the podium, while preserving some of those views to the wetland.
For us, as the maintenance, it's impossible to maintain grass or just open space in these areas. It's actually better to replant with shrubs and native plantings, palmettos. So the landscaping plan we don't have, I apologize, I don't have our draft landscape plan that's in TRC review, but there's a significant amount of plantings that are not only mitigation for the grand trees, but at the shrub level and the smaller tree level as well.
I'll just add one more thing on the the typology of the planting. We've also tried to kind of create this layering approach of ground covers, shrubs as well as the trees, and
Thank you. Any other questions of the applicant? Generally, how are we feeling about the answers given for?
Public comments done. There's a hand back there. Okay.
I guess what I look at, I feel like that we've asked about specific tree locations. There were definite thought through reasons for them to be requested for removal as part of the design. So it was not necessarily, in my opinion, let's get 2 more units if we take this tree out. You know, and that little C grade variance request tree, even if you take those 2 lots out, you got this high ground, and then it's gonna get, I don't even know what that looks like in the neighborhood overall. It's probably best for that tree to be removed, get this lot set, you plant your new trees, or 600 with the 2,500 protected remaining, the 80% of the 130 whatever grams that were there. There's 600 more trees showing up, or 600 more caliper inches, sorry, of tree, 240 trees being planted. That's significant.
Yeah, I definitely see the wetlands and the road connections driving a lot of this. You're trying to hit those 4 points. And unfortunately, there's 2 C trees that just right. I don't know.
Or even the amount of fill, like that parking lot tree, that could be rearranged, but not if you're putting that much fill into it, or the amenity, you know, without seeing that closer. Could work around those trees, but not if you're, you know, adding 2 to 3 foot of fill. That makes that more complicated.
Yes, I just don't see. You know, if you're thinking about this one here, Jeff, you pretty much have to take out. You know,
That's the tree we
road
specifically,
And, you know, and trends that keep that, just doesn't make sense.
that's the tree we specifically sought out. That's the triple southern magnolia.
Yeah, so, I don't know.
Just over 6 inches, like I think it's
3 trunks.
Right, and it's multi-stem.
Yeah, it's not really a specimen tree.
So I think that they've done a good job of really analyzing with the team, how to risk with air, which trees make the most sense for them.
that magnolia is an 8, 10, 11.
Can you put up your recommendations here? Anybody?
And street trees can be part of the mitigation. Is there any
That's right.
rules as to where those can go?
They can
So
be,
street trees aren't required because these aren't public right of
that is
ways.
correct.
Okay. Any street tree that would count towards mitigation.
Yes, it would.
Two hundred 2.5.
Yeah.
That's a good number.
That's a lot. Along with everything that's being saved.
Do we have a, there should be a certain mix of trees. Obviously, we don't want a monoculture. But I think that would happen.
That's a
I
good
think
idea.
that's where note number 5 comes in, right? That they'll put their mitigation plan together, and then It's gotta go before TRC to get approval. It won't be all.
It needs some live vote.
They need some, but it can't be all of them.
Thoughts on that? If there aren't any other questions from the applicant or staff, is there a motion to be made?
I'll make a motion for approval with staff recommendations.
All right, so there's a motion for approval with staff conditions. Is there a second to that motion? Second going once,
Second.
seconded by Calvin. All right, then we'll go to, just, say all in favor, say aye in favor.
Aye in favor.
Aye in favor. Who's opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
So 4 opposed and 2 for. So your application is not granted. It's denied. So we would now be going on to the next item, which would be item B5. Yes. I think that's. Right. Item B5 is 1064 Morrison Drive, East Central. The TMS number is 46109030002. The zone GP. Requested variance from section 54.327 to allow the removal of 8 protected trees. Eric.
Upper Morrison Drive. This is the application submitted by Klein Engineering. This narrow little wedge type size property is zoned upper peninsula. UP. This shot shows it being kind of used as a laydown area, but it's the former home of Martha Lou's Soul restaurant. That building was demolished soon after the office building was completed. Adjacent to the railroad, as you can see, it's got drainage easements traversing across it. And as we all know, every tree has value for habitat, for what have you, but it's got a few red mulberry, hackberry, and then an elm or 2. Volunteer in nature. See the trees here. The one X far right is actually a street tree, so that's under the jurisdiction of the Parks Department. The Parks Department will deal with that. The proposed plan is to build a bank branch. You'll have an entry drive with an escape lane, and then the teller lanes, and then you would exit utilizing the slightly modified existing curb cut for the office building, which opposes Williman Street. So very much urban in nature, where the building is up on the public realm. Parking again off of the cross access easement. And then the drive-through is the primary driver here. You'll have a few parallel parks adjacent to the railroad. That ditch that exists today. Can't quite make it out. Well, actually, I guess you can. There's a little dark line behind the trees there and the cars. It looks like it has water in it in this particular photo. That will be piped and reworked. A little bit of a blow up. Here's the quality of the trees.
Nice.
Staff recommends approval with the condition to plant 40 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the project site and provide a landscape plan for staff review and approval.
And thank you, Eric. First, I think if anybody present that's opposed to the application.
This one we got no comments submitted for 1064.
All right, seeing no one present that's opposed, applicant.
How you doing, Matt Klein, 49 Immigration Street, Charleston, Klein Engineering. Eric did a great job presenting this. If you want to go back to the site plan, I'll spend 1 minute talking to you guys about what's going on. So 1080 and 1090, we started in 2019. It has a parking garage. It used to have 5 or 6 buildings on the property. It's now got 2 buildings and a parking garage on the property. The entire outfall comes out in this ditch. This was placed. So the reason why Martha Lou's ended up having to come down in general is because this is an existing drainage pipe that used to run straight through the underneath Martha Lou's. So the city wouldn't allow the city couldn't accept the drainage easement with a structure on top of it, so we had to take it out. It was always intended to be redeveloped. This is a redevelopment plan. We always intended to route storm drainage around. We'll have to adhere to the stormwater ordinance. But we will be relocating the stormwater. As you can see, the ditch section goes straight behind, just kind of meanders the property line. The intent here is to build up, have it street level, if if that makes any sense. It does fall off to the rear. So we'd have it street level all the way back to the back. It's a drive through. We are saving that street tree. Eric, I did get approval from DOT to move the drive 10-15 feet to save that. It's a 24-inch live oak street tree. So that has happened since this was submitted. Other than that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to help. But I think Zach can speak to this, but I think the majority of the parking requirement for this specific branch is going to be taken in the parking garage next door. Sorry. This is minimal.
Where's the pond at?
Say that we're done.
You didn't have to do a pond because it was grandfathered in, or
No. So
free?
we I was on the phone with Anthony today on this project for stormwater, because we kind of have we have 2 different ways. This was Martha Lou's that had a parking lot on it. But we did take it out. So, and then now they're changing the ordinance. So it's we're gonna have to work through some of those things. My opinion is we will have underground detention in this area here. We will have a pipe system that will collect this drainage and this drainage and this drainage. We will have a pipe system.
It bypasses
It will likely have some sort of a baffle box downstream that will backwater into an underground storage facility for a couple of different things. That's my envision. I don't know what will end up happening. We will most likely have pervious materials on the paving sections. We don't have that planned yet exactly, but it is very important to be able to have the approval to remove trees before we get to that level.
Gotcha. I'm just curious.
No problem. I was thinking about it. After I met with him at 3:30. I think that it's gonna be, the idea for mine is not I'd like to keep the piping solid between the outfall of 1080, 1090 and the outfall to the property.
That's all going south.
Yes. It all goes out to Yard Creek. So I just think it'd be nice to keep it all uniform, straight pipe, and then backwater into a storage area, kind of instead of the typical building your storage.
Upstream.
Yeah.
It's more like in line.
In conveyance. I don't want the storage to operate in conveyance.
Thank you. close the, if you would like to speak, we'll close the public portion. Maybe open to the board for more discussion or questions of the applicant. Or motion.
So motion to approve with staff conditions.
All right, motion by Calvin for approval.
Second.
Second, beyond. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
In favor. Any opposed? That's approved. Thank you all.
I'd like to introduce real quick, Matt Slagle. Matt will be transitioning into Board of Zoning Appeals by the first of the year. So we'll be training Matt up. He's got an environment. Uh-oh.
Well, I guess we're getting kicked out.
Time to go.
Can't stay.
So recording.
Another fiber optic cable?
Yeah.
That was a mess.
All right, so Eric, I can ask a question. I think we made a mistake on that B4. That we could have separated that out, special exception motion and variance motion.
You could have.
Because it's two very different tests, right?
Uh-huh.
The special exception trees could have been approved and the variance trees not. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I blew an opportunity for the applicant. Because now they like redesign or wait.
They can't resubmit, I think, for 6 months or come back with a new plan,
New plan.
They can appeal.
or they could appeal.
They'll probably appeal.
I would.
Well, they can also rework the
But-
plan, which is what I think.
But in effect, what good is given the special exceptions though? I mean, plan doesn't work without the variances though.
Most likely, but at least it would have gotten that one step closer to where they were wanting to be.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, the special exception test is, you know, is it sitting in the buildable area basically? And yes, it is. So take the tree out.
And I just want to be clear, two were Jeff, were you
Jeff
for?
and I.
Jeff and Joel, and against was Calvin, Paula, George, and Deandra. Okay. Just want to make sure I got that right. Okay. So, and then, of course, Eliana will be involved in BZA site design as well as support staff.